Imagine the dim light of a Berlin office in November 1943, where two German colonels, Reinhard Gehlen and Alexis von Wren, pore over stacks of captured American documents from the Italian front. These aren't secret battle plans, they're everyday supply charts, lists of fuel, ammo, and equipment pouring into Allied hands. Gehlen's eyes widen as he calculates the numbers. One U.S. corps guzzles more gasoline in a month than entire German army groups on the Eastern Front. They cross-check with prisoner interrogations and aerial photos, and the truth hits like a panzer shell. America produces 37,000 tanks that year alone, 3 times what Germany manages, along with 86,000 planes and ships launching faster than U-boats can sink them. It's impossible, Gehlen mutters, but the math doesn't lie. The Second World War, this brutal clash of nations, shifts not on the battlefield but in factories across the ocean. The Germans are stunned, realizing their vaunted Tigers and Panthers can't outfight an endless tide of American steel. What would you do if you saw defeat written in cold, hard numbers? Rewind to the late 1930s, when the world teeters on the edge of catastrophe. In America, the Great Depression still grips the land, and isolationism runs deep. Folks just want to put food on the table, not meddle in Europe's troubles. The U.S. Army ranks 19th globally, smaller than Portugal's, with outdated gear from the First World War. Tanks. Barely a handful roll out each year, 18 medium M2s in 1939, clunky machines that look more like tractors than war beasts. But across the Atlantic, Hitler's Wehrmacht blitzes through Poland, France falls in weeks, and the Luftwaffe bombs Britain. President Roosevelt sees the storm coming. He calls for a massive buildup, urging Congress to fund 50,000 planes a year. Skeptics laugh. How can a nation of farmers and factory hands match the Axis war machines? Yet, deep in the American spirit, a fire kindles. Ordinary guys like you and me start whispering about duty, about standing up to tyrants. Then comes December 7, 1941. Japanese planes scream over Pearl Harbor, torpedoes rip through battleships, and 2,400 Americans die in the smoke and fire. The nation reels, but anger surges like a tidal wave. Lines form at recruiting stations. Boys fresh out of high school sign up, their moms clutching handkerchiefs. "We'll show 'em," one kid tells his buddy as they board the train. Congress declares war, and Roosevelt taps William Knudsen, a Danish immigrant who rose from Ford's assembly lines to head General Motors. Knudsen's no general, he's a production wizard, the man who knows how to turn nuts and bolts into miracles. He gets lieutenant general stars, the only civilian to jump straight to that rank, and heads the War Production Board. His mission: transform America's auto plants, those humming giants in Detroit, into arsenals of democracy. Chrysler, Ford, General Motors, they all pivot overnight. No more sedans and coupes, now it's tanks, jeeps, and guns. Picture the Detroit tank arsenal, a behemoth rising from farmland in Warren, Michigan. Knudsen pushes Chrysler to build it in record time. Ground breaks in September 1940, and by April 1941, the first M3 Grant tank rumbles off the line. Workers swarm the place, 24 hours a day, shifts overlapping in a symphony of welds and rivets. Women step up too, those rosies with bandanas and determination, swinging hammers where men once dominated. One gal, Mary from Ohio, leaves her farm to join the line. She writes home to her sister, "Sis, you'd hardly believe it, I'm assembling turrets now, big as a house. Feels good knowing this steel will protect our boys over there." African American workers break barriers, like Joe from Alabama, who migrates north for a job at Fisher Body. He tells his family in a letter, "They got me on the chassis team. Pays fair, and we're all in this together." Imagine, me building tanks to crush Hitler. Production surges, from 365 tanks in 1940 to over 4,000 in 1941. The M3 Grant, with its 37mm gun and sponson-mounted 75mm, isn't perfect, but it's tough and reliable. What would you say to your folks if you were welding the armor that saves lives? As 1942 dawns, the ramp-up hits full throttle. Roosevelt sets jaw-dropping goals: 60,000 planes, 45,000 tanks that year alone. Skeptics call it impossible, but American ingenuity proves them wrong. Factories convert in weeks. Packard switches from luxury cars to Rolls-Royce Merlin engines for P-51 Mustangs, while Baldwin Locomotive Works churns out M4 Shermans. The Sherman becomes the workhorse, named after General William Tecumseh Sherman, a nod to Union grit. It's not the heaviest or the deadliest, 35 tons, 75 mm gun, Ford V 8 engine, but it's built for speed and mass. Assembly lines crank them out like Model Ts, with interchangeable parts so any mechanic can fix them fast. By mid-1942, 15,000 Shermans roll out, flooding training camps where green recruits learn to drive, shoot, and survive. One tanker, Private Eddie from Texas, scribbles a note to his sweetheart, "Honey, this Sherman's a beast. Rides smooth, gun packs a punch. Can't wait to take it to the Jerry's." In North Africa, Operation Torch kicks off in November 1942. American forces land in Morocco and Algeria, Shermans clashing with Vichy French and then Rommel's Afrika Korps. At Kasserine Pass, green U.S. tankers face Panzer IVs, learning hard lessons in the desert heat. But the numbers start telling. For every Sherman lost, 2 more arrive by ship. German scouts report back, puzzled at first. "These Americans throw tanks like confetti," one lieutenant wires Berlin. But the high command brushes it off, confident in their superior designs. The Tiger I, with its 88 mm gun and thick armor, debuts in late 1942, a monster that shreds allies from afar. Yet production crawls, only 1,347 Tigers ever built, each taking 300,000 man-hours, handcrafted like fine watches. Henschel's factory in Kassel works around the clock, but Allied bombs rain down, disrupting lines. Meanwhile, in America, the Detroit arsenal alone peaks at 896 Shermans a month. Workers like Rosie push through fatigue, fueled by patriotism and swing music on the radio. One story stands out. A young widow named Betty in Michigan loses her husband at Pearl Harbor. She joins the line, riveting hulls with tears in her eyes. "This is for you, Tom," she whispers to each tank. Her letter to her parents reads, "Mom, Dad, the boys here say our work wins the war. I believe it now." By year's end, U.S. tank output hits 26,000, dwarfing Germany's 6,000. The surge is real, a tidal wave building. Cut to the front lines, where American boys feel the impact. In Tunisia, spring 1943, Shermans support the push against Rommel. Corporal Jack from New York commands a crew in the 1st Armored Division. They nickname their tank Lucky Strike, painting a cigarette pack on the turret. Jack writes home, "Dear folks, we took out a Panzer today. Boom, right through the side. But lost a buddy in the next platoon. War's hell, but our Sherman's holding up." The battles rage, dust choking the air, engines roaring as formations maneuver. Germans nickname Shermans Ronsons for lighting up easy, but crews adapt, adding sandbags and logs for extra protection. Brotherhood forms in those cramped hulls, driver, gunner, loader, commander, all relying on each other. "What if it was you in that turret, facing incoming fire?" one might ask around the campfire. Production back home ramps higher still, 29,000 tanks in 1943, including improved Shermans with wet ammo storage to cut fires. Knudsen's magic works. He triples machine tools, streamlines suppliers. Factories hum with efficiency, workers clocking 72-hour weeks without complaint. But the Germans sense something's off. Intercepted radio chatter captured GIs spilling beans under interrogation. They piece together the scale. In Berlin, Guderian, the Panzer genius, reviews reports and shakes his head. "The numbers doom us," he confides to aides. Hitler rants about wonder weapons, but reality bites. On the Eastern Front, Soviets churn out T-34s, but America's Lend-Lease sends thousands of Shermans their way too. In Italy, after Sicily falls, U.S. forces grind up the boot. At Anzio in January 1944, Shermans bog down in mud, but reinforcements pour in. Private Sam from California, a loader in the 3rd Infantry Division, pens a quick note. "Ma, the tank's my home now. We sleep in it, eat in it. Yesterday, we blasted a machine gun nest, saved a platoon. Pray for us." The human cost mounts, but so does resolve. What would you write home after a day like that? As spring 1944 blooms, tension builds across the Channel. The Allies prepare for D-Day, the massive invasion of Normandy. American factories hit peak, over 20,000 tanks that year, including the new M26 Pershing Heavies, though few make it in time. Shermans get upgrades, better guns, wider tracks for mud. In England, tank crews train relentlessly, waterproofing vehicles for beach landings. Sergeant Bill from Illinois leads a platoon in the 2nd Armored Division. His letter to his wife. Darling, the sea's rough, but our Sherman's ready. Think of the kids, this is for their future. Germans fortify the Atlantic Wall, Rommel inspecting bunkers, confident in their defenses. But intelligence whispers of the American surge, ports clogged with ships, fields full of tanks. Gellen's team warns of overwhelming numbers, but Hitler dismisses it as bluff. The cliffhanger looms. Will the beaches run red, or will American steel break through? June 6, 1944, D-Day erupts. Landing craft churn toward Omaha and Utah beaches, waves crashing, machine guns chattering. Shermans fitted with duplex drives bob in the surf, some sinking, others grinding onto sand. At Omaha, chaos reigns, tanks bogged down, infantry pinned. But D.D. Shermans from the 741st Tank Battalion push forward, cannons blazing at pillboxes. Lieutenant Bob from Massachusetts commands one. Forward, boys, he shouts as they silence a gun emplacement. His quick postcard home later, survived the beach. Tank took hits but held. God's watching. The breakout begins, Shermans rolling inland, clashing with Panzer Lehr. Germans counterattack with Tigers, one beast knocking out 3 Shermans before a lucky shot disables it. But for every Tiger, 10 Shermans replace losses. Production back home ensures it. Chrysler alone builds 18,000 minutes and 4 seconds. Workers hear radio reports, cheering as they bolt on turrets. One foreman, Al from Detroit, tells his team, "That's our work out there, lads. Keep coming." Hedgerow country slows the advance, bocage ambushes claiming tanks. Crews improvise, welding prongs to bust through. In July, Operation Cobra unleashes carpet bombing, Shermans surging through gaps. St. Lo falls, the race to Paris begins. German prisoners gape at the endless columns. Where do they get all these tanks? One asks a GI. The answer, American factories, unbombed, churning day and night. In the Pacific Theater, meanwhile, Marines use Shermans on islands like Saipan, flamethrower variants scorching bunkers. Corporal Mike from Hawaii, a gunner, writes his brother, "Bro, this Sherman's a lifesaver. Roasted a Jap pillbox today. Miss the surf, but duty calls." What if you were island hopping, tank rumbling over coral? By late 1944, the surge overwhelms. In the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge erupts December 16. Germans launch a desperate offensive, King Tigers lumbering through snow. At Bastogne, the 101st Airborne holds, but tanks decide it. The 4th Armored Division relieves them, Shermans battling in blizzards. Private Tom from Minnesota, a driver, scrawls, "Cold as hell, tank's heater busted. But we push through, saw Tigers stuck in mud. Ours keep going." Germans capture some fuel depots, but it's too little. Their 1,800 tanks in the attack dwindle. America replaces losses overnight. Gellen's earlier warning proves prophetic. Allied superiority hits 5:1. In factories, workers like young Tim from Pennsylvania, just 18, join the line after his brother falls in Normandy. "For you, bro," he mutters, tightening bolts. Letters home mix pride and pain. Spring 1945, the Rhine crossing. Sherman's ford bridges, Pershing's debut, slugging it out with Panthers. In Cologne, a Pershing duels a Panther in the cathedral shadow, emerging victorious. German morale cracks, soldiers surrender en masse, whispering of America's bottomless arsenal. Hitler hides in his bunker, ranting, but the end nears. In the Pacific, Sherman support Okinawa assaults, crews enduring kamikazes. Sergeant Lee from Oregon writes, "Wife, the tank's scarred but strong. One more push." VE Day comes May 8, VJ Day August 15. The surge wins the war. Reflect on those American boys, the factory hands, the tankers, their courage forging victory. Their letters home echo sacrifice, brotherhood unbreakable. The Germans, stunned from the start, learn too late, America's heart and hands outmatch any foe. What legacy would you leave in such times? The war ends, but the echo of that surge still rolls across the decades like distant thunder. From 1940 to 1945, America builds 88,476 tanks. More than Germany, Japan, and the Soviet Union combined. Think about that number for a second. 88,000 machines, each one born in the glow of arc welders and the sweat of ordinary people who refused to let the world fall to darkness. Detroit alone outproduces the entire Third Reich. Chrysler, Fisher-Body, American Locomotive, Pacific Car and Foundry, Pressed Steel Car, names you never see on a History Channel ticker, become cathedrals of freedom where steel is baptized in fire and sent across 2 oceans to keep the promise America made to itself and to the world. Back in 1946, a young German officer named Hans von Luck, who fought Shermans from El Alamein to the Falaise Pocket, walks through the ruins of the Henschel factory that once built Tigers. He stands in silence amid twisted girders and shattered jigs, then turns to his American escort and says, almost in a whisper, "You didn't beat us with better tanks. You beat us with more tanks, faster tanks, tanks that kept coming even when we thought we had destroyed everything you had. We never understood how." Von Luck later writes in his memoir that the first time he saw an American replacement battalion roll fresh Shermans off the landing ships at Cherbourg while his own company had only 3 runners left, he felt something colder than fear, inevitability. That inevitability started with boys like 19-year-old Raymond from Flint, Michigan. Drafted in '42, he trains on the M3 Lee at Fort Knox, then ships out with the 2nd Armored. He fights across North Africa, Sicily, Normandy, all the way to the Elbe River. In every campaign he rides a new tank because the old one is either scrap metal or still burning somewhere behind him. Raymond keeps every tank's name painted on his duffel bag: Honeybee, Hellcat, Thunderbolt II, Lucky Lady, Iron Horse. 5 tanks, 5 crews, 1 kid who just keeps climbing back in the hatch because the next Sherman is already waiting at the dock. He writes his mother in the spring of '45, "Ma, I'm tired, but every time I think about quitting I remember you working double shifts at Buick. If you can do that, I can do this." Raymond makes it home, marries his high school sweetheart, names his first daughter Liberty. He never talks much about the war, but every July 4th he drives the family past the old tank arsenal, long since converted back to making Buicks, and just nods at the empty buildings like they're old friends. Across the country, the factories wind down. Women hang up their coveralls, men trade welding torches for lunch pails again. The Detroit arsenal finishes its last Sherman in August 1945, then quietly switches to Cadillacs. Workers gather on the lawn for a final photograph, thousands of them, arms around each other, faces sunburned and smiling through exhaustion. Someone starts singing, "God Bless America," and the voices rise until the whole block shakes. They know what they did. They turned a nation of car builders into the greatest armor forged the world has ever seen, and they did it without ever hearing a shot fired in anger on their own soil. In Washington, the generals tally the final numbers. America lost 19,247 tanks in combat across all theaters. Terrible, heartbreaking losses, but for everyone knocked out, for more rolled off the lines back home. The replacement rate is so high that by 1944 some crews joke they get a new tank the way civilians back home get new tires. Just sign the form and drive it away. German intelligence officers captured in the final weeks still carry notebooks filled with frantic calculations trying to figure out where the next wave is coming from. They never do solve it. The secret isn't some hidden factory or miracle alloy. The secret is a free people who decide, all at once, that liberty is worth any price, and then pay it with 12-hour shifts, ration books, and letters that begin, "If anything happens to me." Years later, in the 1950s, a reporter tracks down William Knudsen at his home in Michigan. The old Dane is retired now, frail, but his eyes still burn with the same fire. The reporter asks the question everyone wants answered: how did you do it? How did America build an arsenal no one thought possible? Knudsen leans back, lights a cigar, and smiles the smallest smile. "We didn't do anything special," he says. We just stopped making excuses and started making tanks. Then he adds, quieter, and we had the best kids in the world willing to ride them into hell. That is the real story of America's tank surge. Not just the steel, not just the numbers, but the hearts that powered them. Farmers who became riveters. Girls who became welders. Boys who became crews inside 35 tons of rolling thunder. They never asked for glory. They asked only that the job get done so their brothers, their husbands, their sons could come home. And because of them, most did. So the next time you drive past an old factory with ivy on the bricks, or see a restored Sherman at a museum with kids climbing all over it, remember Raymond's duffel bag with 5 names painted on the side. Remember Mary and Betty and Joe and Tim on the night shift. Remember the stunned German colonels staring at columns of fresh tanks stretching to the horizon and realizing the war was already over. They just hadn't been told yet. America didn't win the Second World War because it had the best tank. America won because it had the most tanks, built by the best people, driven by the bravest boys the world has ever known. And when the last echo of the last rivet gun finally faded away in August 1945, the world was free again, because a nation of everyday heroes decided freedom was non-negotiable. That surge of steel was more than production. It was proof of what a free people can do when they fight for something bigger than themselves. And if anyone ever doubts what America is capable of, just show them those numbers. 88,000 tanks, one unbreakable spirit. What would you have given, back then, to keep the light on for the world? The answer is everything. And America did.